Hello everybody, today I wanted to make a video for you and talk a little bit about ESA protection. I wanted to do a little quick guide about which cards you are safe to break down. Many people are asking about that, and I wanted to discuss and teach you a little bit about labor management and fleets and operating limits. Let's start with ESA protection. So tomorrow it will be a week since we launched this alpha. And that means that the players that joined the first day of Alpha will start dropping out of their ESA protection. That means that anybody can raid and attack those players. Now, many players are concerned on how to defend against raiding. So if you are an active player, it is pretty easy to defend against raiding. I am now on my little test server. You can see that these are very old scores. This is just a copy of the server from an older time. Okay, so ESA protection. You can see your ESA protection, that the players under ESA protection, they have this red line around this. It says it so right there. God damn it. Let's see. There we go. So if they do not have this red line, they are not ESA protected, and you can raid them and attack them. However, it is not very difficult to avoid, or basically I should say, it is not very difficult to become a bad raid target for others. The first thing you gotta remember is that your industrials do not participate in defense against raids. They will only defend against assault movements. So if somebody is raiding you, and you can usually tell this if they're moving extremely fast, because raids have multiple ways to have their speed increase. So if they're attacking you and going really fast, then it's probably a raid. You don't know for sure, because somebody might set up assault movements and put a lot of speed cards on their fleets. But usually, if they're going way beyond 7 speed, like at 9, 10, 11, it's probably a raid. And you can be sure that your industrials will not participate, and you will not lose industrials when you're being raided. However, if you're not sure, I suggest moving your industrials out of the station. The second thing to remember is that while people are raiding you, they're doing it for resources. They want to steal stuff away from you. So there are several ways for you to make sure that they don't get any resources. So the first is, if you have more than one station, is to use your freighters to move resources from the station being raided to the other station. The second one is, of course, dumping your resources into unit production or building buildings. However, be mindful that if you cancel these queues, you only get half the resources back. So you can't hide your resources completely just by building buildings or building units, but if you're gonna build them anyway, you might as well, so the raider doesn't take away your resources. Another thing to keep in mind is you can hide your resources completely, and that is with the resource vault building. You can level this up to level 10, and at level 10 it is just north of 3,000 resources, if I remember correctly, how many units of each type you hide. So players that are raiding you or spying you, they won't be able to see the units you've hidden, and they won't be able to steal them either. So you're safe. So if you are leaving the computer or leaving the game for a little bit, and you have the resource vault at level 10, and you have 0 resources, nobody will see the resources until it goes above the limit of the resource vault. Another great deterrent for raiders is to build the missile battery. So if you've built the resource vault up, and you've got a missile battery, not to mention if you have 2 missile batteries, you can get the second one with this card here. Then not only are they stealing very little from you, they're also automatically losing units each time they raid you. Eventually, players will realize that that station is not a good raid target, and they will just leave you alone. So avoiding being raided constantly is pretty easy. It doesn't take a lot of resources to commit to, the resource vault is the cheapest building in the game, and the missile battery is a pretty cheap outpost as well. Now, the second thing I wanted to talk to you guys about today is which cards you're safe to break down. A lot of players are having choice anxiety about which cards are safe to break down and which cards they're not. They should hoard and keep for later. So any card that is only for the dreadnought or the carriers, which are the capital ships, if they're only for that unit, you're pretty safe to break them down, because it's going to be a little while until you have fleets of those ships which you need to place cards on. So the first thing I always do is I look for cards. I look for cards that have the shield value on them. Now the search is giving me a couple of extra cards, but the Liquid Stasis, the EM Disruptor, Malestrad, Reflect Shields. These 4 cards you're pretty safe to break down for prestige, because you're not going to be using them for a long while. Other cards that I recommend breaking down are of course a lot of the common cards. Now you only need these station cards. You only need to have one of them for the next station that you're going to have. So you don't have to have multiple Willy Gamiges. You're going to get more. These only common. You're going to get a lot of them. So always keep one in your inventory, but break down everything beyond that, because the next station you build, you're going to put a Willy Gamage on it, and after that you don't need more than to keep one Willy Gamage. Other examples of such cards is Border Monitor. Usually you're only running solar flares from that one cool station that's doing all the solar flares and is specialized, has a level 5 plasma chamber. So these like plasma chamber, like Border Monitor, Willy Gamage, EM Launchpad, Vector Scaling, these are cards that you don't need to have multiples of. You just need to have one in case you're gonna move your operations or in case you build a new station. Recycle Station is another card that you're pretty safe to break down. Molecular Fields, you don't start using those until later in the game, but then you will probably put them on multiple stations as you're pushing out a lot of units, and you have like these extra stations that don't have a specific function in your empire. They're just building units and creating resources. Yeah, do not break down all as one. Eventually you will be using one of these like every day. You'll have a mission running station, and it's good that every day you can put it on a station and keep it up as long as possible, because it really helps running missions smoothly. So what about fleet cards? Wait, not here. So I never use the lowest fleet cards, the common fleet cards, like well, not never, like I never use, like I'm never going to use Force Breaker. I will break it always down because I'm always going to go for a rare or an epic or a legendary card to get this value up on my units. The same goes for like +3 sabotage firepower or +2 offense. That being said, there might come a time where you have an overabundance of units, or that you've wiped all your fleets and lost all your cards, and it's good to have a chunk of these common cards just ready at your disposal, so you can recard your fleets at least a little bit. But this will probably not happen for a while, so you should feel, and you get a lot of common cards, so you should feel safe to break down these fleet common cards. Yeah, okay, so on to my third thing. I wanted to talk about fleets and labor. So first thing I want to talk about is the labor trick in the order button here. It's this slider here. This allows you to transmute one of each of these for 1 labor. So it's -1. Each of these got -1, and I get 1 labor. And if I take it, I can take it all the way to the end to reduce it to 0, or to the 500 at max. If I have 500 of each of these, I can take it to the I can create 500 labor. So the trick with this slider is to move it to the far right. When you're out of supply, your units can't move. If you move it to the far right, you send out your units, and you immediately move it right back. This is because your units, like your station, only needs to be at 0 labor or in the positive to send out the units properly. And after that, after they're gone, you can safely move it back down and continue producing resources. However, people often forget to move it back down to the far left, and so be careful not to do that and leave your station producing no resources while your movement is taking place. Another thing to understand is the difference between the operating fleets, and if I go to F fleets here, is the fleet pool. So this is how many fleets my empire can have. I cannot create more than 16 fleets, and I often have to disband fleets and create new fleets and do a lot of fleet juggling to do the things that I want to do. The fleet operating limit, however, is the number of fleets that can be docked at this station without getting a labor penalty. So if I would dock 9 fleets at this station, I would get a 10% labor penalty to every fleet that is docked at this station. and it is 10% for each fleet above your fleet operating limit. So this is useful to know, especially later in the game when you have an attack incoming and you have a friend that's going to help defend you, and they're going to park. I'm going to park 20 fleets at your station, and that might take you 20 fleets above the fleet operating limit and incur a 200% labor penalty to all of your fleets and all of his fleets too, because all of them are docked at that station. So you have to be careful with this, so that a friend that wants to help you, they can actually hurt you by putting both of you out of labor, and then the attack lands and you are both suffering a 90% labor combat penalty, and you just get wiped out because that friend was overly helpful. That also ties into the orders here, is that the docking permissions. So if you're in Alliance, this is set to Alliance members by default. But you can say that anybody can dock here. However, this is dangerous, because clever players, if they figure out that you allow them to dock there, they might initiate attack and then have their own fleets dock there, or a friend, just one unit fleets, and just put you out of labor and get you that penalty and then wipe out your unit. So you have to be careful with this docking permission. There is also another labor penalty in the game for fleets, and it's worthy to keep this in mind. If you have Station A that is paying the upkeep for a fleet, but the fleet is at Station B and is operating out of Station B, the home base of the fleet pays a penalty. It pays more labor upkeep for the fleet because it's not at home, it's kept far away. And this penalty is 1% for each hex between the stations. So if there was 10 hexes between them, the fleet costs 10% more labor to keep up because it's far away from its home base. This penalty caps at 200%. You can never pay more than 200% penalty, 200 hexes away. And the way to reduce this penalty is called logistic efficiency. If you go to the buildings and we see the logistical support in the military tree, it gives you a 3% logistic efficiency per building level. So I have a station that's paying 10% labor cost because the fleet that this station is paying the upkeep for is 10 hexes away. Is docked at a station 10 hexes away and operating out of the station 10 hexes away. It becomes a 7% penalty because I've got one level of this building. And so if I have it at level 10, I can essentially keep fleets away from this station at a 30 hex radius without any penalty. And the cap becomes 170%. It's also worthy to note that this building increases the operating limit as well. So the building not only helps this station to keep fleets, to pay the labor for fleets that are far away, it also helps more fleets dock at this station. It will directly increase this operating limit, as well as every level of the station increases the operating fleet limit by 4. That's pretty much it for today. Be careful, ESA is dropping, there are adventurous times approaching, and I'll soon have all of your loot.